You're watching Sun TV, broadcasting to the world from studios in Providenciales, in the beautiful binational Turks and Caicos Islands. Sun TV, your source for real news as it happens.
I'm Daciana Bienemy, and thanks for watching this edition of Sun TV News. Here are today's headlines. Opposition leader Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robinson said the PNP government does not seem to care about the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Commissioner of Police Colin Farquhar is called upon to resign. Premier Honorable Dr. Rufus Uren criticized over his handling of the business license increases. The PDM strongly opposes the payroll tax. The Premier gets some strong criticism from his brother, MP Gore Ewan, who accused him of ruining the country. Leader of the People's Democratic Movement, Opposition Leader Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robinson, said the PNP government sees figures and not faces and has lost touch with the people of this country. Addressing a press conference at the PDM's headquarters last week, the opposition leader said the cost of living has reached an all-time high under this present government. She said the PNP government operates without any care or concern for the plight of the people and has little regard for the people who elected them. Here's what she had to say.
Since this government came to office, we have seen existing taxes and fees increased and new taxes and fees introduced with short notice periods, without consultation, and mostly without care or concern for the plight of our people. It appears that this government sees figures and no longer sees faces, and therefore sees no need to talk to its people or consult. If the government were seeing faces and listening to voices other than the ones in their own heads, these faces and voices would tell them that the cost of living is at an all-time high, and it has raised considerably under this government's onerous tax system and short-sighted approach. These voices would tell them raises even within the public service are largely non-existent, and in fact has been frozen in the public service itself since 2006. These faces would say there is no correct record of the number of unemployed persons, but many of us are unemployed, and many of the faces of the unemployed has evolved from not just those with minimal skills, but to include our graduates from college and university, our managers, and the faces of many of our employed will tell you that they are treated like animals on the job, mistreated and victimized, often for standing up for their rights. Yet many work permits are renewed for those who treat workers, and not just our people, all workers less than human. If government would hear the voices of the people, they would hear of the many that are illegally employed, from high-ranking positions in resorts to laborers. And yet the government reports that there are a mere 4,569 work permits, which means that it is losing revenue. These voices will tell the government that persons are losing their homes and businesses. And though the opposition has called on this government to address this matter, especially with regards to Tolco, the company that bought TC Invest loans, the government has failed to represent in any way its people in this regard. I dare say that voices do not have to tell the government that minimum wage remains less than a living wage, and that persons cannot live on even above minimum wage earnings, covering the very basics. Our people's health is failing due to the choice between whether to buy medication or buy food, which has already translated into strokes from hypertension. They are having to choose between whether to pay for school books or pay rent, to buy food or pay light bill. Our people are hurting, and not only is their health failing, but their hope is also failing. The manner in which the government is proceeding with this exercise is far from meaningful, and what they are proposing to implement is not being presented as if it is subject to change, or if they are open to alternative suggestions. It is a come hell or high water. This is what it's going to be. I take responsibility. People are beginning to draw the following conclusions. Their views or opinions are irrelevant. The government has already decided what they are going to do, and the public consultation is nothing more than a charade. Also, the government is not concerned about the well-being of the wage earner. Based on the response at meetings and in other forums, there is no popular support for any tax initiatives being raised by the government, or specifically the payroll tax.
The PDM leader also criticized the manner in which Premier Dr. Rufus Ewan handled reports about the increase in business license fees, which was first reported exclusively by the Sun newspaper.
With the now official publication of the new increases to business licenses, there are some important points to note. Firstly, the Premier went through great lengths to refute the Sun's newspaper article that first brought the proposed fees to the attention of the public, which was then followed up by a press statement from our Shadow Minister of Tourism, Investment and Trade stating our concerns. One has only to carry out the most basic comparison between the two documents to be able to conclude that what was intended and the results are one and the same. We find that some of the increases lack rationale and needs an immediate review. We also note that a number of businesses where known supporters of the PNP and even their ministers have seen no or minimal increases. It is inconceivable that a business license for a casino is $2,000, while one for a single local architect, accountant, or lawyer for $5,400. And this is only one of many distortions in the new schedule. Thirdly, the timing could not be worse. With the economy continuing to experience sluggish growth at best, this is not the time to create further hardship on businesses, as they have a long way to go, as they have long ago cut the fat and have been waiting for an elected government that has the ability to move our economy forward. Unfortunately, they will not have to continue holding, as this government is no friend to the business community or of the people of this country, who eventually feels the cost in the goods and services provided. One must keep in mind that simultaneously, the government is gearing up to introduce payroll tax that will no doubt have a negative effect on business cash flows. In the end, continuing to increase business license as a revenue stream for government is a bad practice and should be abandoned and should be regulatory.
Honorable Cartwright Robinson said her party is strongly opposed to the payroll tax. In addition to voting against it in Parliament, she said the PDM will be leading a public petition against it.
When the opposition first heard the rumor of payroll tax, we issued a release a few weeks ago, and we stand firm in our position. The Premier has said that a payroll tax would not affect the small man. Well, he obviously does not realize just how many of his fellow citizens are already small men, posing otherwise in some instances, and that once income tax is introduced, along with other taxes, many others will become small men. Having said all the above, we believe that we were by 2003, the last PDM year, the envy of the Caribbean in great part because we were a non-tax jurisdiction, and the basis of an income tax, now posed payroll tax, was important in that no tax mix as anything else. For not just the individual not having to pay tax on his or her salary, but the investor was also excused from the responsibility for paying the matching portion of the income tax, an incentive to investing. Introducing the income or payroll tax would immediately alter and change the perception and the reputation of the country from that of a no-tax jurisdiction to the opposite, and it will detract from our attraction as a good place to invest. In our opinion, making such a monumental change with such a potentially huge impact on our country and people should not be the remit of one person or one party or one government. We feel this should be decided by the majority of the Turks and Caicos in the form of a referendum. We are therefore calling on the people of this country to support a petition drive on the non-imposition of payroll tax and also a referendum on this life-altering and country-altering issue. This will measure the voices of this country that is screaming no, and as such we need a measured response for a stubborn government who refuses to hear its people. The minister would of course have the opportunity to convince the people that this is what is needed. So from tomorrow's date, the opposition will be taking to the streets in a petition drive. Should the government of the day continue to force this issue, we wish to remind the people of this country that a payroll tax cannot be imposed without passing a law in the House of Assembly. The Constitution, by virtue of Section 110, is clear. No tax, rate, or other levy should be imposed except under the authority of an ordinance. I say to people listening by Radio Turks and Caicos, and all of us present today, that the opposition vows that if they bring it, we will kill it. No member of the opposition team in the House of Assembly will be voting for any new tax, and definitely not any payroll tax. This stubborn, dictatorial approach reeks of the approach of former governor that we wish to forget and needs to be called out. The people need to call this government into account and let its voices be heard in a lawful and responsible way. Government must hear you. Government must hear us.
One of the strongest critics of Premier Dr. Rufus Ewan has been his brother, Honorable Gov'T Ewan, who is a member of the opposition PDM. During the PDM press conference last Thursday, Gov'T Ewan had some very tough words for his brother and the PNP government. Here's what he had to say.
I must say, so far, after 1 year and 5 months, you the people have received nothing from Rufus administration or Rufus ruination and washi taxation and the rest of the PNP demolition. We have received nothing as a country, as a people. If we cannot speak up, stand up, and we will be further pushed back and be told to shut up. This is our country. We need to take action, and I'm calling on all citizens, whether you be PNP or PDM supporters, you need to take responsibility. You have gone to the polls, you have elected your government, and you let them off the hook. You need to demand what you expect of them.
Commissioner of Police Colin Farquhar has been under fire from members of the police force and the public at large. According to opposition leader Charlene Cartwright Robinson, Commissioner Farquhar has made many mistakes and his leadership is now in serious question. She said she has no choice but to resign.
Whilst we grapple with other crimes, we are concerned in the increased numbers of robberies, and it appears that the criminals are pushing the boundaries, getting bolder and more reckless. We are equally disturbed that following a U.S. advisory issued only a few days ago, another incident or incidences have occurred against American tourists. This, for me, this for us, spells crisis for our nation. We cannot compare ourselves always to other nations, as we know what type of country we want to live in. And we say 3,337 crimes, an increase of 24%, and a low detection rate of 22% is unacceptable and at crisis point for us as a people, because we do have higher standards for ourselves and great ideals by which we choose to live. We believe that the Commissioner of Police has erred in many ways, and his leadership is now questionable for the following reasons. The force is divided, and its morale is at an all-time low. And it appears the Commissioner does not enjoy the full confidence of the majority of his team across local and expatriate lines. Statements made by the Commissioner causes us grave concerns. Recently, the Commissioner announced to the nation and wanton criminals that he lacks resources, which could not have been the wisest thing to do. He therefore showed his hands to criminals. And last year, at the launch of the gun amnesty program, he negatively impacted the much-needed gun amnesty by his own words. There is a serious lack of confidence among the people of this country in his leadership and ability to lead the force at this time. A leading newspaper and several talk show hosts and listeners have already called for his removal. In these challenging times, he has failed to request additional crime-fighting tools, and the opposition's requests for CCTV, fingerprinting database, and police posts were met with resistance simply because the Commissioner of Police did not say he needed them. With the issue of the increase in crime by 24%, the statement that strained people's relations is a contributing factor, the U.S. advisory, the Commissioner of Police has failed to call a series of meetings with the community leaders and the community at large. We believe that he has failed to understand that he is accountable to the people of these islands. We are also concerned that the Commissioner of Police in his third year is yet to produce to the community his policing plan and areas of crime strategy that involves us as a people. We believe that this posting has fast become a failure, and before this becomes a further national embarrassment and also a strain on our relationship with Canada, we are calling for the Police Commissioner, Mr. Colin Farquhar, to do the honorable thing and resign. I have attempted privately to address this matter, and I am sure I am speaking on behalf of the majority of this country, and the right thing must be done in this regard for our safety and those visiting our shores and for the betterment of our country. We are calling on the government to join us in our call for the resignation of the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Colin Farquhar.
Well, that's our news bulletin for today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Tatiana Bienemy. Be sure to join us again next time.